farmers are therefore selecting the best bio and synthetic insecticides for onward dissemination to farmers. Prince Apia reporting.
Very concerned in that report. You know what that means, right? If we are losing the crop, that means we have to import cabbages, and that could also affect inflation, as we've been talking about the fact that we missed the single-digit target we set for ourselves in 2020. Now, ratings agency Moody's is forecasting a growth rate of 4% for Ghana this year. This is a sharp contrast to the 1.4% projection by the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects released last week. Charles Nixon looks at Moody's latest 2021 Sub-Saharan Africa Outlook report.
Moody's said the credit profile of Ghana reflects economic strength which balances strong growth potential against small-scale and low but growing wealth levels. It further said the institutions and governance strength reflect an improved fiscal governance framework balanced by recurring revenue underperformance against budgeted targets. It expressed concern about the elevated debt burden in addition to the prospect of further contingent liabilities or possible obligation materializing in the energy sector whose debt is close to $1 billion. The US-based international ratings agency also highlighted the country's exposure to international capital flow reversals leading to exchange rate instability and high borrowing costs. Ghana may head to the Eurobond market to raise between $3 to $5 billion in March this year, but that will be dependent on market conditions as the coronavirus still lingers on. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic in April last year, Moody's downgraded Ghana's economic outlook to negative from positive. It, however, affirmed Ghana's long-term local and foreign currency issuer and foreign currency senior unsecured bond ratings at B3. This meant the nation could borrow with little risk on the international market.
All right, let's subject this to some analysis. Joining me via Zoom is financial analyst Dr. Lord Mensah. Thank you so much for your time tonight on the program. Fair projection by Moody's, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for now, I would say yes, it's quite fair because looking at the happenings on the grounds with COVID and all those, we still have our institutions intact. It's just the, what we call it, the integration to the global market, and then also a bit of distortions when it comes to, free movement of, agent who makes up the economic activities of the country. But then in the end, as things eases up and over time, I presume and I believe that things will get better. So for me, it is quite fair.
How do we reconcile Moody's projection of 4% with that of the World Bank, 1.4%? If you are a manager of the economy, what would you be thinking now?
Well, let's look at at the point where the World Bank was making its projections. You could see clearly that the COVID and its happenings were not that clear into the future. Now we can boast of vaccines that are coming up, and if we should get some of these vaccines into the environment and get people's movement easily, we should be able to restore the economy as it was. So we have to look at the time, at the point where World Bank was making its projections and the time that Moody's has made its projections. At the point where Moody's is making its projections, we can talk about vaccines that are in the line coming up, and in the end, if Ghana should get importations of these vaccines, trust me, freedom of movement will come up again, and the services that gives us revenue are going to reignited again, and in the end we'll see a very good future. So for me, I'm not surprised with a difference in the two projections. Okay,
but you talk about the vaccines. We are waiting patiently for the vaccines to arrive here in the country. We don't know when that will happen, but even in the countries where they have got the vaccines, they are still struggling with the pandemic. Now we're hearing of a second wave maybe here in Ghana and a new strain, and that would further prolong the challenges. I'm just thinking, what would this difficulty we are in how would that affect government's game plan going forward? I mean, we're all thinking that in the middle of this year, perhaps things would have been mitigated a bit.
Well, if you look at the vaccine, we might not get the vaccine here, but you have to understand that the Ghanaian economy is integrated to the global environment. And in the end, if our sources of imports get better and economic activities are going on, I think it's going to enforce import into our environment. And an economy that depends on, import obviously will thrive.
Okay. And so the World Bank, in its analysis, mentioned that the expected resilience in the Greek will not be sufficient to offset the COVID-19 pandemic's lingering adverse impact on oil and other sectors of the economy. You agree with that as well?
I'll come again with your question, please. I didn't get you all, sir.
We got excited when we heard that, we got a Greek had improved in terms of its contribution to economic growth. And then the World Bank is saying that alone, the expected resilience in the Greek sector would not be enough to offset the adverse impact of the pandemic. And so in terms of planning, don't put your hopes on Greek.
Yeah, well, agriculture, we have to look at its contribution to our GDP. And you can see clearly that our great contribution to our GDP is not as large as the services sector and the manufacturing sector. So effectively, if we should bank our hope on agriculture, we might be deceiving ourselves. And that's exactly what the World Bank has told us. So for me, if you look at the history and the statistics, under no circumstance should we bank our hope on agriculture if it is doing well. Agriculture can only support the local economy. If agriculture is doing very well, at least we'll get food on our tables. What about the clothes that we wear? What about the things that we import? Are we going to say agriculture is doing well, and as a result of that, exchange rate is going up, and because of that, our import, how would it fare? So effectively, I would say that yes, indeed, agriculture is doing well, but then we cannot bank our hope on it because of its contribution to our national coffers. Agriculture contributes, less into the coffers. So effective, if we are to bank our hope on agriculture, trust me, we might be deceiving ourselves.
And Moody's raises some things that we may potentially gloss over. It talks about weaker institutions and governance being some of the things we should be taking a critical look at. What do you think Moody's is driving at?
Well, the institutions that we have, I think, yes, we have the institutions. But then as to how they are functioning is where the problem is. If you look at Ghana, the structures that we've put in place as far as economic management is concerned is very, very fantastic. But then in the end, as to how they are functioning to make up, the engines for growth, that is what we're struggling with. So if Moody's has rated us and they are giving us a caution on the weakness in our institutions, I would say yes, they are on the sound path. And in the end, we have to sit up and make sure that our institutions function as expected.
Let's see if we can do the next question in a minute. Nobody wants to hear about borrowing at this point in time, but this week we heard news that the IMF had maintained its lending capacity at $1 trillion. And then we are wondering, countries like Ghana, how should we react to this? How can we take advantage of this?
Yeah, that's interesting. If IMF, which is a fund, and in the end, countries are contributing to this fund, has adapted that conservative posture by maintaining its, loans that it can give to its fund members, then obviously Ghana should also adapt similar posture. We should also adapt that conservative posture by limiting our borrowing, because every country, every institution is trying to make sure that they become conserved as much as they can, try to stay afloat until these COVID issues eases up before they can think about being aggressive. So effectively, if IMF has adapted that posture of maintaining their distributions to their fund members who apply, I think Ghana, we should know that we are quite limited in terms of accessibility to funds, like cheap funds, like the ones that come